Since our marriage, my husband, who has always been attached to his mother, has never contributed to the upkeep of our home. His reliance on me became evident when I informed him of an upcoming business trip. Panicked, he exclaimed, "Who will look after me while you're away?" After a heated discussion, I proceeded with my week-long journey. Upon my return, I discovered a note next to the completed divorce documents, which read, "Since you've abandoned the housework, I'm going back to my parents. Consider the divorce papers and think it over." This infuriated me. His audacity to threaten divorce was unacceptable. However, as I calmed down, I began to see this as a potential opportunity. Perhaps a divorce wasn't such a bad idea after all. Resolute, I submitted the papers the following day. The next morning, my bewildered husband stormed in, demanding, "Where are the divorce papers?" When I told him they had been filed, he broke down, utterly perplexed and crying uncontrollably. I'm Grace, 32 years old, and have been married for just over a year. After completing my studies, I diligently climbed the corporate ladder at a prominent company. Amidst the hustle of my work at the agency, I met Edward, a softly spoken man a few years younger than me. We soon connected over several outings, and his respectful and understanding demeanor during our courtship led me to believe he could be the one. When he eventually proposed, I was overjoyed, eager to embark on a lifelong journey together. However, our marriage unveiled challenges I had not foreseen. Joyfully accepting Edward's proposal, we became officially engaged. Visiting my parents, they emphasized the lifelong commitment marriage entails. "Grace, always be there for Edward," they advised, and I readily agreed as Edward listened intently. Next, we visited Edward's parents. His father, Arthur, welcomed me warmly, remarking on the positive things he had heard about me from his son. Yet his mother, Michelle, seemed more reserved, directly asking Edward, "Is this the one?" To which he confidently responded, "Yes, Mommy, I want to marry her." I was slightly taken aback by his use of "Mommy" and Michelle's forthright manner. Quickly, Arthur intervened, saying, "Enough, Michelle. Edward has had a relatively smooth ride so far. However, he may prove to be somewhat of a challenge going forward." I responded with assurance. I adore Edward's gentle side, and I know we support each other. Arthur then turned to Edward, urging him, "Starting a family is a big deal, son. Step up and keep her happy." Edward, looking earnest, nodded in agreement. Our meeting concluded, and not long after, Edward and I celebrated our union with a low-key wedding. To our delight, my parents gifted us a condo where we embarked on our marital journey. However, it soon became evident that Edward was not accustomed to household responsibilities. One morning, while I was busy with laundry and preparing breakfast, Edward's alarm rang at 8, but he continued to sleep soundly. No matter how much I tried to wake him, he wouldn't stir. Finally, after pulling off his covers and giving him a shake, he slowly opened his eyes. "Wow, it's 8:10 already." "Why didn't you wake me up?" he complained. I reminded him, "I did try, and your alarm was blaring too. Now please eat your breakfast." As he rubbed his eyes and shuffled to the dining table, he immediately started complaining about the eggs. "Hey, Grace, this egg is too runny. I can't eat this unless it's well done. Make it over," he demanded. Caught while hanging laundry, I tried to hold back my irritation and snapped, "Then don't eat it." "Why would you say that? And this coffee, it's scorching hot." "Mommy always got the eggs and coffee just right," he added. All right, I sighed, quickly redoing the eggs and letting the coffee cool. He ate hurriedly but left his plate on the table, rushing toward the restroom. "Wait up. You know you should clean up after yourself," I called out. "Gee, I'm short on time," he called back, dismissing his responsibility. Annoyed, I paused my makeup routine to clean up the dishes while picking out my outfit. He called out again, "Grace, over here. Help with my tie." There he stood, tie hanging limply around his neck, looking utterly helpless. "Seriously, you can't even tie your tie. What did you do before we got married?" I asked. "Mommy always did it," he replied sheepishly. With a deep exhale, I tied his tie, and somehow we both managed to leave the house. This had become our routine. He never helped with any housework, and it felt like I was juggling everything and babysitting him too. Every time an issue arose, it was always "Mommy did it this way," or "With Mommy it went like that," always referencing his mother, Michelle. This routine dragged on for a year, and as the pressures mounted, thoughts of divorce began to creep into my mind. My father's insistence that marriage is forever echoed in my mind, tempering my frustrations. However, an unexpected hiccup at work led to my being assigned a week-long business trip starting the next day. When I broke the news to my husband that evening, he paused his video game, clearly surprised. "Hold up, a business trip for a whole week? It's out of my hands." "Work's calling," I explained. "No way. Who's going to cover for you here for a week?" he asked, irritation seeping into his tone. "You'll have to step up. It's about time you got a grip on the household duties," I responded. At that, he sat down, his controller in hand, and locked eyes with me. Isn't the wife supposed to care for her husband and the house? Are you just bailing on that? His question dripped with outdated expectations. Seriously, that's such old-school thinking. We both have jobs. We should be a team, I countered. That's not how I see it. Mommy was always on top of things at home, he retorted. But I couldn't help but point out she was a stay-at-home mom, and honestly, it's kind of odd to hear an adult man constantly talking about mommy. He bristled at this. "What's your deal? Taking shots at me and my mommy?" "I'm not, but let's be real. You're a mama's boy," I said. "This is how you see me? You think you can talk to me like that?" His defensiveness escalated. I had reached my limit. "Face it, you're a mama's boy. You can't get up without help, can't even tie your tie, and won't lift a finger around the house. You're constantly comparing me to your mom. For once, handle your stuff. Really, you're going to come at me like that. That's why I was iffy about marrying someone older. Should have sided with mommy and chosen a younger, perkier girl," he shot back. His words struck a nerve, and our conversation spiraled into a major blowout. Even jokingly, "You shouldn't say stuff like that." "We're married," I said, trying to anchor the conversation to the commitment we had made to each other. The tension between us was palpable, revealing the deep rifts that had formed in our relationship. When my husband hinted at divorce during our heated argument, I was taken aback. With a smug tone, he challenged, "You can't possibly want a divorce, can you? You wouldn't want to be labeled divorced. And think about what your dad said about sticking together." But then he sharply added, "Well, I just did. If you go on this business trip and leave me here alone, I'm seriously considering a divorce." With those words, he stormed off to our bedroom, leaving me stunned. Despite the shock, the idea of divorce lingered in my mind, something I had previously struggled with as I didn't want to disappoint my parents. Yet now, it seemed like a viable option to contemplate seriously. With these heavy thoughts, I went to bed. Bright and early the next day, I was up preparing for my trip. The fallout from our argument was still fresh and weighing on me, but I had work commitments to attend to. I nudged Edward, who was still nestled under the covers. "I'm heading out. You better wake up or you'll be late for work." His response was a sleepy, unintelligible mumble. Rolling my eyes, I left. A few hours later, a text from him popped up on my phone. "You barely tried to wake me. Now I'm running late. Did you really go on that trip?" I quickly texted back, "I did wake you up. And yes, I'm on my trip. I'll be back in a week." He read my message but didn't reply. Mid-trip, I decided to call my parents to update them about Edward's behavior and share my growing inclination towards divorce. I braced myself for a lecture, unsure of how they would react to the possibility of our marriage ending. The call was going to be a difficult one, but it was necessary to seek their advice and perhaps their understanding of my situation. The response from my parents took me by surprise. "We had no idea he behaved like this. Take your time to think, but don't force yourself to stay in a situation that isn't right. Always remember, we are in your corner no matter what you decide." Their words of unconditional support brought tears to my eyes. Upon returning from my business trip, I knew a serious conversation with Edward was inevitable. If he didn't show signs of change, I was ready to consider divorce more seriously. My mind was abuzz with thoughts as I walked into our house late in the evening, only to find Edward wasn't home yet. As I looked around, a set of signed divorce papers and a note on the table caught my attention. The note read, "Since you ditched the housework, I'm heading back to my folks. Check out the divorce papers and think things over." Reading this, my initial reaction was rage. How dare he threaten me with divorce? But as my anger subsided, I began to see the situation differently. Maybe this was an indication that ending things might not be such a bad idea after all. With that realization, I decided to file the papers. When the divorce was finalized, I felt as if a heavy weight had been lifted from my shoulders. That evening, I went to bed and slept more soundly than I had in a long time. The next morning, as I enjoyed a peaceful cup of coffee, the door swung open, and in walked Edward, clearly upset. "Why didn't you come to my parents' place to apologize? What's gotten into you?" he demanded, his temper flaring. Then, noticing the empty spot where the divorce papers had been, his expression shifted from anger to shock. "Hold on, where are the divorce papers?" "Oh, I filed them," I calmly responded. "You did what?" He looked as if he had been slapped. "You went through with it." "Thanks for signing them. It made everything smoother," I said. "You can't be serious. Did you go all the way? Have you lost your mind?" he exclaimed, unable to hide his astonishment at my decisiveness. Seeing how composed I remained, he lost his cool completely. "That's it, I'm calling my parents." "Sure, knock yourself out," I replied, undisturbed by his threat, knowing I had made the right decision for myself. An hour after the confrontation with Edward, his parents, Michelle and Arthur, arrived at our apartment. Michelle immediately spotted me and dramatically exclaimed, "You. How could you just divorce Edward like that? What's your deal?" I responded coolly, "If he had the divorce papers all filled out and ready to go, doesn't that suggest he wanted out? Is that a problem?" "How can you be so bold when you're just his wife?" she countered. But before the situation could escalate further, Arthur intervened with a firm, "Enough." The room fell silent. Arthur turned to me. "Grace, can you walk us through what happened?" I agreed and began detailing the ongoing issues, our argument before my trip, and the divorce papers Edward had left for me. I was at my wit's end. It seemed like he wanted a divorce, so I went with it. I explained, maintaining eye contact with Arthur. After a moment of consideration, Arthur was about to speak when Edward interjected. "Mommy, Daddy, come on, can't you see she's out of line? Tell her off." Michelle quickly sided with Edward. "Oh, Edward, my poor baby. She's so hasty. You should reverse the divorce right now." "There's no reversing it. Our divorce is final. We're strangers now," I stated firmly. Michelle's face turned red, and she opened her mouth to respond. But once again, Arthur cut her off. "Zip it, Michelle." He then apologized to me for Edward's behavior. Turning to Edward, whose eyes were bulging with surprise, Arthur continued, "You bonehead. I knew you had issues, but this is next level. Using divorce papers as a threat. Unbelievable. You had it coming." Michelle tried to interject, but Arthur didn't let up. "It's partly on you, Michelle. You spoiled him. Watch out, if you keep this up, I might divorce you too." The tension in the room was palpable as Arthur confronted the reality of the situation, leaving Edward and Michelle at a loss for words. After the intense discussion, Michelle was visibly shaken, her thoughts lingering on the unexpected threat of divorce from Arthur. She murmured to herself, visibly troubled. As Arthur turned his attention back to me, his expression marked by sincere regret, he said, "Grace, I deeply regret the trouble our clueless son has caused you. It's clear he has a lot to learn. Please move on and find happiness in your life." Arthur implored with genuine concern. Thanking Arthur for his understanding, I watched as he left, taking a dejected Edward with him. It wasn't long before the news spread throughout our circle. Arthur had decided to cut financial and emotional ties with his son, a drastic step meant to push Edward towards self-sufficiency. After a while, Edward's life took a downward path. He moved into a modest and somewhat neglected apartment, marking the first time he truly lived independently. The transition was far from easy, as his new home quickly descended into chaos, mirroring the disorganization of his personal life. Faced with no one to rely on and his habitual tardiness catching up to him, Edward soon found himself without a job. Simultaneously, the dynamics within his family deteriorated further. Michelle, who had always been deeply involved in Edward's personal affairs, repeatedly crossed boundaries, leading to a serious falling out with Arthur. This ultimately resulted in their separation, with Michelle moving in with Edward, both of them struggling to find stability. They resorted to taking low-end jobs, their lives marked by a series of unfortunate events and poor choices, with no clear path to improvement. In contrast, my own life took a markedly different turn. Freed from the daily stresses and emotional drain of my relationship with Edward, I found myself alone in our condo, which now felt surprisingly spacious and full of potential. With renewed energy and focus, I dedicated myself wholeheartedly to my career. At my workplace, I experienced a flourishing professional life. Feeling emancipated and hopeful, I wholeheartedly embraced my newfound autonomy. My living environment not only felt more spacious, but transformed into a genuine haven where I could unwind and envision my future. The enhancement in my work life was tangible, and I approached each day with a sense of enthusiasm and eagerness for what the future held. The stark contrast between my thriving circumstances and the deteriorating situation of Edward and Michelle was evident. Although they were no longer a part of my life, the lessons gleaned from our shared journey profoundly resonated, reinforcing my dedication to personal growth and contentment.